Hi, I'm Sylvie from HR.com, and I'll be your webcast host today. We're happy you could join today's webcast, How Recognition and Rewards Transforms the Remote Workplace, sponsored by Achievers and presented by Meghan M. Biro. This webcast has been pre-approved for one HRCI and one SHRM credit. Please be sure to attend the complete webcast in order to receive your credits. Throughout the webcast, you're welcome to submit your questions using the Q&A tab on your Zoom controls, and we'll do our best to get to them at the end of the session. And it's now my pleasure to turn it over to Meghan M. Biro.
Thank you so much, Sylvie, and hello, everyone. I am delighted to be here. I am big on storytelling, as you know, so I'm going to tell you a story today. I remember talking to a close friend who works in the New York City area, and in the space of a weekend, literally everything changed for her. She went from a thriving and bustling office and a staff she was very close contact with on a daily basis to everybody being at home. And they had the same projects to accomplish that they had before. She woke up on Monday morning and had no idea what to expect or how to stay connected with her people and how to keep them on task, aligned and energized, and most importantly, engaged. It was like the wall suddenly went up between them all. This story played out in so many forms all over this country, at that point, all over the world. This quick pivot to remote working left many organizations unprepared. Faced with the task of managing a newly scattered workforce, companies have backpedaled, right, on valuable new talent management strategies in favor of something I call simple triage. From an HR perspective, I can certainly understand this, but this is exactly when rewards and recognition can bring your remote workforce together, building connection, alignment, and engagement that will help not only your talent, but your business. And yes, I'm talking about the global pandemic we've all faced. This is when we need those powerful tools more than ever. They went from great to have to need to have tools, right? Which is really what had to happen anyways. I mean, if you tune into me on talentculture.com or on Work Trends, I've been talking about this for what is about a decade now. We just didn't expect it this fast. And with a number of states backing away from fully reopening now, not to mention this new realization that remote can be a great way, to work from different sectors, because remote's not going away. So listen, I want to cover with you what we're going to be talking about today. So here's what you're going to learn. You're going to learn how to craft a rewards and recognition program that responds to the needs of the remote workforce, how to best leverage the glue that we have to our phones and the nature of which we're working remotely now, why remote employees need increased frequency when it comes to recognition, the power of news feeds and social sharing in driving a cycle of recognition, how to turn moments of rewards and recognition into a fluid cycle that involves everybody, how to measure the effectiveness of remote rewards, recognition, and most importantly, yes, if you're a data geek out there, you're going to love it, how to leverage your data to improve it. Last but certainly not least, how to make sure your recognition program addresses the 4 key factors of effectiveness. So listen, Sylvie, I don't know about you, but I'm ready for a poll. So I want to hear from you, the audience. How do your employees feel about working remotely? We got some options here. They're happy with it overall. They're feeling disconnected, but getting their work done. They're feeling dissatisfied and frustrated. Please do weigh in. I'd love to hear from you.
I'll give it another 5 seconds here. The votes are still coming in.
I can't wait to see these results because I'm sure there's degrees within each of these answers. And here we go. Woo. But here we go. 57% of you are happy with it overall. 41% of you said you're feeling disconnected, but getting the work done. And 2% of you are feeling dissatisfied and frustrated. So for me, that's a pretty good response. I mean, we're really getting a picture right now of your sentiment. And I know a lot of leaders and managers are looking for ways to increase connection right now and certainly, reduce any of this frustration. So thank you for that. I appreciate you weighing in. Um, so let's talk about the challenges of working remotely, because one of the most striking things about the state of remote work now is how it started suddenly and on a massive scale. No doubt most organizations were not prepared for it. Just to remind you of the scope of this massive pivot, a Gartner study of 229 HR leaders back in April of 2020 revealed 81% of their employees had shifted to working remotely through the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, some 30% of those employees were working remotely at least part of the time, according to this survey. And the leaders polled know what's coming, right? They say 41% of their employees will continue working remotely in some form. Another survey that ran in May found that 57% of employees want to keep working at home. 8 months in or so, we're adapting. And instead of biding our time and waiting for a return to what I'm going to do air quotes with normal, we're trying to get better at what's really happening and commit to improving it, which is great. But employees are facing some less than ideal situations right now. I got to get honest with you all, right? And tell me if any of these ring true to you. Social isolation. A big complaint about remote working is how isolated it can make employees feel. For those that are used to bustling energy and constant company in the office or a workplace, the shift to working from home can just feel jarring. That problem happens over time, right? Those bouts of loneliness can actually cause employees to disengage from a company as they lose that sense of belonging. What about no face-to-face interaction? The lack of face-to-face interaction is an issue for everybody right now. From a manager's standpoint, they miss those moments when a brief and informal conversation may lead to a breakthrough or an extra dose of inspiration or a push to get the job done. There's also a concern as to whether or not you're going to be able to effectively keep track of an employee's progress and make sure they're working effectively. So, from an employee standpoint, you're feeling kind of alone, unsupportive, which again, we don't want. I don't want that disengagement to happen, right? There are so many other challenges as well, such as lack of access to shared information and knowledge. This can be a real shock to the system for remote workers. So much frustration mounts when you can't get a simple answer to a simple question, or your team works together on a project and you can't access the documents or files you need. But there's more to it. The Harvard Business Review talks about the fact that a lack of access to knowledge can create interpersonal challenges and tension, and that a lack of mutual knowledge among remote workers translates to a lower willingness to give coworkers the benefit of the doubt in difficult situations. When we don't know how our coworkers are doing, we don't know why we're getting that super short email, right? And we may assume something that's not true. Another issue is distanced and disconnected communications. And that's something we all grapple with in the face-to-face workplace as well. Timely responses and a cadence of communications are absolutely critical. And when we're facing incredible home pressures, distractions, disruptions, less than ideal workspaces, childcare overlapping work responsibilities, caregiving issues, and no way to really conduct adequate time management because there's just not enough time. It can all add up to this sense of overwhelm that can leave managers as well as employees feeling defeated and disengaged. And that can trigger a dangerous case of burnout, where we simply don't have the energy or the will, let alone the bandwidth, to get our work done. Finally, a big problem for many remote workplaces is disconnection from the work culture. So, what can we do to improve and increase this connection? That's something I'm looking at very closely right now. That's frequent in small doses and brings back some kind of community and connection, which I know we all need right now. Listen, there was a timely article in the Harvard Business Review about managing remote workers by Barbara Z. Larson and two other authors. And I want to give this a shout out, this quote. Research on emotional intelligence and emotional contagion tells us that employees look to their managers for cues about how to react to sudden changes or crises. If a manager communicates stress and helplessness, this will have what Daniel Goleman calls that trickle down effect on employees. Effective leaders take a two-pronged approach, both acknowledging the stress and anxiety that employees may be feeling in difficult circumstances, but also affirmation, right, of their confidence in their teams. With this support, employees are more likely to take up the challenge which, with a sense of purpose and focus. Daniel Goleman, for those of you who may not know him, is an expert on emotional intelligence. And what he found is that employees look to their managers for cues on how to respond to a situation. And in a crisis, that behavior is magnified, as well as the need to provide the right cues. A crisis is definitely not a time to lose confidence. The challenge then is how can managers take this two-pronged approach in a remote workplace? On one hand, managers need to recognize that employees are dealing with a lot. It's not an ideal time to say the least. So there has to be empathy and there has to be tact. On the other hand, managers need to convey their faith that the team can execute even in tough times and affirm that faith in an active way. The answer is, of course, a digital solution. This provides ample opportunities to communicate confidence, encouragement, remind employees of purpose, and provide the cues that employees need to maintain their focus and their confidence in themselves, most importantly, but also each other. This also gives employees plenty of opportunity to convey their thoughts, concerns, feedback. See where I'm going with this? We are talking two-way communication, and it is critical, especially right now. So let's think about the messages you can get from team members, coworkers, people you're collaborating with, and your leaders and managers that help you throughout a given day, that we hope are encouraging, uplifting, and may address serious challenges as well. Sometimes they come at just the right moment, right? Or they remind you that you're not alone. And I'm going to give you some samples here. Messages like, we've got this. This is tough, but I know we can handle it. Let's look for ways to leverage our strengths during this time. Thanks for your positive approach to this! Exclamation point. You're a problem solver, and I appreciate that. This team can tackle anything. Thank you for your commitment. It inspired all of us. Okay. So, granted, none of these are big strategic communications. I get it, but they're direct and simple. And sometimes that just means so much, right? They show appreciation and gratitude. They inspire employees to dig in, acknowledge some discomfort, and show faith and confidence in a team. One of the most effective kinds of messaging in terms of remote working is to just say something, make it clear. Get this, 40% of employees in the recent Achievers 2020 Culture Report said they don't feel recognized enough for their work during COVID-19. In retail, not surprisingly, it's 48%, nearly half. But there are so many really simple ways to express recognition in so many forms. Digital delivery means there's never anything standing in the way of sending a note of cheer. And guess what? This can do wonders. And I know if you're out there and you're taking notes at home, you're probably going, boy, this sounds so simple. So what I want to do, though, is connect the dots for you from here, right? Let's talk about how to craft a rewards and recognition program that responds to the needs of the remote workforce, because that's where we're all sitting right now. The best strategies for delivering rewards and recognition make a lot of common sense. It's about listening as well as it is telling. A common question in the remote workforce right now is, how can I know what my remote workforce even needs? We're so busy. We are immersed in the day-to-day of trying to get our work done in a nonstop remote way. Meetings, we're communicating in how many different ways that it's really hard to stop and address what the real needs are. But the answer is this: just ask the question. If you don't know your employees, you certainly aren't going to be able to engage them, right? So find out. It doesn't have to be complicated. Send out a short survey, even a single question. For cadence, you might want to go on a kind of fact-finding mission over the course of 1 week. A series of these questions can inspire a sense that your opinion matters, right? That we're in this together. Also, what this does, it jumpstarts great insights and suggestions. And plan to share your findings. So many times, what I find is people are left in the dark. Don't do that, right? This information that you're gathering can and should be shared. If you think a survey is too dry a format, think again. Here's some interesting findings in a culture report, right, from Achievers. Get this. 77% of respondents said they would be more honest in a survey than in a conversation with a manager. So we love to give our feedback, but we don't necessarily love to have it discussed, right? Or drop out of what we're doing to have a face-to-face meeting. We also like to remain anonymous for a host of reasons, and all are worth respecting. I get it. So I broke it down to 6 areas that you're going to want to ask about. Of course, there are going to be effective ways of phrasing these questions within the context of a pulse survey, but here's some basics that you should be hitting, right? Connection. As questions about connection, it's not just to the company, but to each other, such as, do you feel a sense of connection to other employees? Do you need to feel more connected to them? Community. Do you feel like you're part of the community? What makes you feel like a member of the community, and what would make you feel more so? What could be done? Timeliness. When you get recognitions, do they happen in a timely manner? What about feedback? What about answers to questions? Consistencies. Are the ways you're recognized consistent? Practical solutions. Do your managers provide practical solutions to your problems and to the challenges of working remotely and dealing with outside pressures as well? Encouragement. Do you feel that you get enough encouragement on a day-to-day or even a weekly basis? You see what I'm doing here, team? We're breaking it down for you. We don't want this to be complex. I want this to be simple for you. The silver lining of having a remote workplace where communications are delivered digitally is that we have so many different tools at our disposal. If they're used as part of a recognition and rewards platform, that also means they're creating data and providing insights. The more you reach out, the more you get feedback, the more you learn about your own work culture. So here's a list I'm going to give you of great rewards and recognition tools. It's very possible that some of these you may not have even thought of, okay? So let's go down the list. Surveys, feedback, individual dashboards, social shares and social campaigns, personalized messages. Really important here, team. Mobile access. This is really important, and we're going to spend some time on this in just a moment. Email messages. Don't discount email. A great short email can be a powerful way to deliver recognition, and I think we forget about that sometimes. Appreciation cards. These are very easy to send out on a recognition platform. Various rewards buttons, right? Let's focus on rewards for a moment. Rewards are so effective when they relate to what your employees want. I've seen some really interesting adjustments in rewards programs since COVID-19. Instead of dining or travel, it's takeout and points towards a post-pandemic trip. Another big trend right now is donations to a cause, sent on behalf of an employee, or a gift for self-care or entertainment that's delivered online. Retail rewards, essentials, even groceries or a holiday meal with a prepaid Visa card. But also, do me a favor, make it local. If you have a workplace that has locations all over the world, choose a platform that has that reach but can provide local offerings. It feels more somehow personal right now. And then invite your managers to make their own recognition gestures. See where I'm going with this? We're moving more towards personalization, right? Okay, so How are we going to best leverage that glued to our phones thing that I'm talking about? I mean, I tell you, the language of working evolves over time. It's innovations that change the meaning of certain words. Telecommuting literally used to mean that you were working somewhere else and then phoning it in to the workplace. The commute was via phone lines. Now you could call it digicommuting, right? And the old two-dimension aspect of that phone, talk and listen, call and answer, it's been replaced by the incredible range and scope of the mobile experience. Compound this with the fact that we are working and living via remote, and the phone has become a central hub of how we function. A survey done in late May of 2020 of 22, get this, 22,000 mobile phone users found that 39% of the participants were relying on their phones more due to social distancing. The effect of the pandemic on phone usage is shown by substantial increases in app usage, texting, and calling. Overall video calling was up by 32%. So if you think your employees are simply using work on their laptops or desktops, think again. A ComScore survey of data usage found that average in-home data usage rose by 18% from the beginning of March to the middle of March, with at least some of that attributed to mobile phones and more Americans using the internet on their phones, on their work phones from home. So I think it's highly possible that at any given point in the day, your employee is using their mobile phone as somebody else in the family uses the family computer. They may take a break from hours of Zoom calls, go for a walk, or bring their phone with them. They may be giving computer time to a child who needs access, right, to their digital learning platform. Many companies can't provide their employees with laptops and equipment. A recent IBM study found that 53% of remote employees surveyed were using their personal laptops for work. But with a laptop shortage noted by April, and Pew Research data revealing that many kids, right, of lower income and even middle income families, they're facing equipment challenges as they try to access digital learning. That home computer may now be serving a lot of different purposes. So it's absolutely critical to be able to reach people on their phones and bring this right into the work culture through their phones. That means a platform that offers a lot more than just texting capabilities. If you want to reach people right now, reach their phones. It can turn a gesture of recognition into this special moment in a hectic day. And I know a lot of us are feeling that right now. Okay, so why remote employees need increased frequency when it comes to recognition? Here's how I'm going to break it down for you. Increased frequency in terms of any communication during the pandemic is a best practice. It keeps us connected to each other, and it makes the digital workplace feel, well, more human, more real. There's a frequency of endless information and messages without any kind of heart and soul, and that's kind of icky. We want to avoid that. And there's frequency of moments of recognition and appreciation. And there's really a huge difference between these two. We are living in a time of peak VUCA, volatility, complexity, uncertainty, and yes, ambiguity. We are experiencing more disruptions, more stress, more skills. And at the same time, businesses are facing an incredible stress test that's actually not a test at all. It's real and it's still happening. And to sustain themselves and survive, they need their employees to be more motivated, more agile, and more adaptable in the workplace. As Kelly Wong, who I adore, by the way, she wrote recently on the Achievers blog, that means whatever you can do to reinforce and foster those qualities, you should be doing and doing even more. That's what employees want. 60% of workers want to be recognized more frequently than they are, according to the Achievers 2020 Engagement and Retention Report. Recognition is an enormous shaper of behaviors. When you recognize an employee for something, they are far more likely to repeat that behavior again. And as many of us have experienced in the last 8 months, There is so much going on in any given day, right? Given this work-life blur we're experiencing as remote workers, that we may be developing a kind of focusing deficit. As a manager, the very best way to bridge the gaps is to use more frequent recognitions and to ask for and consider the input of employees as well. This becomes a means to guide as well as it is to motivate more contact, more recognition, more feedback, and more connection all work together in this remote workplace I'm talking about. Okay, so let's talk about the business case here, because I know if you're like me, there has to be a bottom line here, right? How are we delivering value? From a business perspective, frequent recognitions have a clear value. And it may seem a little bit counterintuitive, since it may seem like more work, more attending, more person hours. I get it. But a digital platform does so much of the heavy lifting and really makes it easy once you get going. And a culture of recognition gains momentum quickly and is driven both sides by that. But it drives both sides, is what I meant to say, to engage in a conversation. The more recognitions, the better the impact on employee engagement and retention. A report by Brandon Hall found that organizations that rate their culture of recognition highly are 2.25 times more likely to provide frequent recognition and 2.7 times more likely to see increased employee retention, and they're twice more likely to see increased employee engagement. Achievers research found that organizations that give recognition frequently are 41% more likely to see increased employee retention and 34% more likely to see increased employee engagement. These organizations rate their culture of recognition highly for good reason. They're leveraging technology and they're using a platform that delivers. So anyone in the organization can recognize anyone else, direct reports, peers, supervisors, at any time, in any place, and on any device. Recognition and rewards happen in timely and frequent gestures. So appreciation is gained in real time and is relevant to work, and this is so important, as it happens, not in the past. Managers and leaders have the ability to track the quality, the frequency, and the breadth of recognition as they work to improve their recognition culture. So, not surprisingly, an effective recognition culture has a powerful impact on employer brand. It underscores the fact that the organization is a great place to work and a place people want to work, even more important, right? In a remote culture, that still holds true. One incredibly efficient way to convey values, mission, culture, and the personality of an organization is through recognition and rewards. And the Brandon Hall survey found that organizations that rate their culture of recognition highly were 79% more likely to give their employer brand a high rating. And employees who work for an employer that uses R&R technology were 23% more likely to rate their employer brand highly than, guess what? Non-technology users. See where I'm going here, team? All right. We're going to do another poll. I want to make sure everybody is still with me, and I want to hear from each of you right now. So, when a manager recognizes someone in your organization, who's in the loop? Just the person being recognized, a person's direct coworkers and team, person's department, the whole kit and caboodle, the whole organization. Please weigh in. All right, what we got here? I'm excited to see this. Oh, interest. Look at this. Okay, 25% of you said just the person being recognized. 29% of you, the person's direct coworkers and team. 22% of you, the person's department. And 25% of you said the whole organization. So clearly, we have got a lot of diverse perspectives and experiences in this audience. As the answers came in, is it making you think? When we get good news, what's one of the first impulses? It's to share it, right? All right, I'm going to close this out for us. Yep, I'm skipping ahead. I'm getting so excited here. Okay, let's talk about the power of news feeds and social sharing and driving a cycle of recognition. In a remote culture, social is one of the best ways we build and maintain connection. I've talked to a lot of companies, right, and to a lot of practitioners out there about how they're keeping their employees engaged and aligned when everyone is scattered and working remotely, especially in the last 3 to 6 months. Among the most effective strategies was, guess what? Social sharing, spreading the good news. The Achievers Engagement and Retention Report from 2020 found that 82% of workers said they wish they received more recognition for their work. That's an enormous percentage, more than three-fourths of those surveyed. And again, this is human nature, right? It's common sense for managers to recognize this. I think a news feed is a really great way of doing this, right? It can be positioned on your dashboard, on your recognition and rewards platform, so employees can see what's happening in real time. It's also a great way to convey the cycle of recognitions and feedback and stay, guess what? I'm going to go to the T word. Can anyone guess it? Transparent. And it's also, and I have to admit this, it's kind of addicting, right? The same way any news feed on social media is just plain addicting. It's also feel good. Trust me, try it out. You'll see. And again, look at some of these numbers here, right? The data is speaking to us. So relationships and teams are built on individual moments and touch points. And every time we are reminded that we have the ability to rise to the challenge, every time we feel that support from our coworkers and our managers and leaders, that builds resiliency, not just among individuals, but among the whole work culture. That confidence that we can overcome a challenge isn't just an attribute, right? It has to be grown and fostered. And recognition, I feel, is a huge part of that. But it's also key to make sure that recognition and rewards are going to everyone, not just the individuals, but teams, other managers, the people behind the scenes. If a team has just accomplished a major goal, find out more about their business unit or their department. That good work doesn't happen in a vacuum. We know that, right? It takes a village, it takes a community. So take the initiative to find out who the village is and recognize that village, right? Recognize your community. Provide the means and the channels for others to recognize their coworkers, their teammates, even their managers. It's a great way to increase that sense of inclusion. We talk a lot about the democratization, boy, that's a tricky one, huh? Of data, that we need everyone to be able to access and understand data. I'd say the same is absolutely true with recognition and rewards. You know, coming up with that language. So speaking of data, there are some highly effective ways to measure how successful your program is in terms of your remote workforce. I'm just going to touch on some of the measurements you can take if you're using a digital platform that is recording every moment, every communication, and adding them up in a picture of what the heck's really going on. This can be so useful when you're aiming to improve your remote work culture. So here's some metrics to look at. Participating. Who's participating in what recognitions? Which ones tend to catch on and drive more participation? And in a moment, I'm going to look at a great example of how this all works. The 2020 Culture Report found a clear correlation between recognition and engagement, right? Even in a remote work environment, recognition remains an important predictor for engagement. And the more recently a person receives it, the more likely they are to be engaged. See where I'm going? If employees were recognized in the past week, nearly half were very engaged. Of those recognized in the last month, that rate drops down to less than a third. And if they haven't received any recognition in more than a year, it's only 16%. See what happens when you increase the cadence of recognitions. Survey your employees on engagement before you increase the cadence, during, and also after. Okay, performance. Measuring performance is also about rewarding performance. When you're tracking milestones achieved and clear progress has been made, you can track those recognitions to see when performance really soared. Sentiment. How employees are feeling about themselves, their teammates, their work, their workplace, and their manager is so important. And you have to have the means to find out, so you can do pulse surveys and check-ins. Again, make sure they know the door is always open and provide a means for them to weigh in. Alignment. There's so many ways to improve alignment and so many forms of alignment, right? Behaviors, values, mission. Alignment has really changed since the pandemic, as research has found. So it's not as easy to bring everybody on board, and there are so many other pressures pulling at employees, but it's still a key factor in a successful work culture, and that's not going to disappear anytime soon. Okay, case in point, GM. Let's look at a great case history of harnessing the power of rewards and recognition to really boost the overall work culture and turbocharge employee performance. General Motors has some 160,000 employees across 6 continents, and recognition is a key tenet of their company culture. Recognition of the same values and behaviors all over the world. But when GM asked employees how they felt about the existing recognition program, they discovered a lot of dissatisfaction. So they set about fixing this by searching for a platform that was robust enough to become a global program that would drive engagement across the board and be straightforward. They chose Achievers to power their new recognition program and launched it for 67,000 employees in 26 countries. Within 30 days, a full 80%, or actually a full 87% of GM's global population were active on the platform. And within 6 months, employee recognition was one of the 5 most improved areas on their engagement survey. It was also the topic on the survey that got the most comments. There were 5,000 comments by employees about how appreciated and valued it made them feel. And participation was high from the start. There were over 80,000 unique recognitions sent. 7 out of 10 employees were active in the monthly program, and 8 out of 10 managers send recognitions monthly. I think the reason this worked is because the program wasn't built in a vacuum. It took the needs of employees into consideration and found ways to work across many locations and bringing everybody together. So as you can see, it was built on real goals for real people. And we cannot substitute that, right? It becomes a welcoming part of people's work, a way to keep people aligned and feel the sense of belonging in shared sentiments. So I want to talk to you about how to make sure your program addresses 4 key factors of effectiveness, because GM is GM, your brand is yours. And what shapes how we feel about our jobs and our teams and our role is our ability to do great work and stay engaged. What helps us feel steady and confident in the face of uncertainty and disruption? What makes us feel part of our organizations, right? Not just a cog in the machine. When you're building up or starting your own program, keep these elements in mind. To create that sense of community and safety, build check-ins, pulse surveys, and plenty of places that share results, and peer-to-peer recognition. Build rewards programs that not only give employees a way to give back, but address those needs that people have. You have to make it personalized. Foster this sense of connection and when you do that, that really increases the frequency and responsiveness to better bridge the remote environment. Make recognizing employees a daily practice at least, right? Reach out with an informal check-in as well as feedback. Invite people to share concerns and ask questions when they need to. Keep a light on in the window, so to speak, right? You want to enable access, so that's both mobile and desktop. We covered this today, but it really needs to be stated again. We are living and working as much, if not more, on our mobile phone these days. Mobile phones are our lifeline, our radar, our shopping list, our phone book, our social life, which is kind of scary, but true sometimes, our office. And more than anything, it keeps us connected to each other. Provide recognition and rewards that matter. This may not be the ideal time to have employees accumulate points toward that dream vacation, but a prepaid credit card towards purchases of their choices may really hit the spot right now. And if you're not sure what matters to your employees, ask them. And guess what? Listen to what they tell you. You might just be surprised. Okay, so I want to listen to what you're telling me right now. So here we go. And this one is personal. I'm asking you specifically, what's your favorite reward for a job well done? Is it points for a meal or a gift? Just appreciation from my team? The chance to go on an adventure? Anything to do with self-care? I want to hear from you. Wow, we got a lot of you weighing in here. Thank you. Appreciate it. I want to hear from you. Well, here we have it. The top one is at 45%. Get this, appreciation for my team and manager. 22% of you said points for a meal or a gift. 22% of you also said anything to do with self-care. 11% of you said the chance to go on an adventure. So there you have it. Just getting that appreciation from teams and managers. It's coming up ahead. Look at that. Well, listen, I want to recognize all of you in the audience for joining me today and for participating in our polls. Before I get to some of your questions, I just want to take a moment and reflect on just how far we've come in the last 8 months or so. We are coping with stresses in the workplace and in our lives that we never imagined. And we're not just coping, we're learning how to sustain ourselves in our endeavors, and we're learning how to engage our employees and support their growth. It's not just an endurance test, because I think there's so many opportunities to celebrate small victories. And I think these moments of recognition and also the rewards we give and receive are going to have enormous meaning for us in the future. We are going to look back at this time and remember how we pivoted, how we evolved, and how we deepened our appreciation for the power of a great work culture. And also how we realized it doesn't have to happen in person. It can happen remotely and it can be digital. What matters is that it's not just a few moments of positivity a week. It's a continuing cadence of acknowledgments, shout outs, appreciations, and really honoring each other for doing the amazing work we do. So I want each of you to pat yourselves on the back right now for wanting to make our workplaces havens and communities, and for reaching out for the innovations that are going to help us do just that. So I want to thank you for being here with me. And I think we probably have some time for some of your questions.
Okay, I'm seeing the first question here right now. Thinking of the statistics on employers always wanting to be recognized, always wanting to be recognized more than they are, isn't that a given? And does that mean that more recognition will actually result in better performance?
Well, that's a great question. I would say that yes, everybody wants to be appreciated, certainly, but we're looking for more than just a blanket gesture here. I think what gives a recognition program its real power in terms of the workforce and performance is seeing how much engagement and productivity can rise when this is all more frequent. So you're seeing the direct results, right? You could be asking about whether recognition is driving certain behaviors. So you might want to see how, just by sending appreciation cards to employees for aligning with some of the values, right? Such as toughing it out, innovating, coaching others. You might just drive more alignment with those particular behaviors. And the data shows us that positive reinforcement will indeed drive alignment. And the more specific we get, the more we learn about what employees really want. So hopefully that helps you.
Okay, the next question here is, it's a really stressful time in our business. We really were planning on instituting more rewards and recognition, but we don't know how we could get our whole workplace involved since everyone is scattered and there's no co-located teams now. Any advice?
I'm so sorry if you're out there. I know it's such a stressful time. And I think, probably a few of you had this question. I think this is a tough time for so many of us. But it also seems like the perfect time to kind of sit and build a program into the day to day workings of your company. And you can really do it entirely via digital platforms now. So it's a simple matter of getting people up and running and then making sure managers are practicing that cadence and really inviting everybody in to participate. We want to definitely make sure it's on mobile because I think there's a lot of opportunity for social sharing here, and definitely make it a part of the way we're working now. I think actually a lot of people are already informally doing this. Like you're sending out text messages with emojis, right? Maybe some smiles, maybe some hand claps. You're doing it already. But we have a platform that does this, and that's going to become part of the culture, part of your nature. So we may be far apart, but we're coming together on the screen, as somebody once told me. So yes, these are stressful times. And yes, I hear you. It's a tough time, but I think that the only way to get started is just to make that commitment that you want to get started.
Okay, next up. Can you talk a bit more about the connection between cadence and alignment? We're trying to make the case for more frequent recognitions as a way of keeping employees focused on business goals.
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, I think when I think about truly effective recognitions, I think about them being meaningful to the employee in terms of acknowledging that what they do and how they do it really matters to the organization. And the more you do this, the more clear it becomes just what those actions and behaviors are. So you see how those moments will add up to convey a full picture of the business values and mission. But a really big part of cadence and alignment is providing feedback in real time. And I can't stress this enough. So you understand what it is that's working and what it is that matters to the company. Then you can actually associate it with something that just happened. So it feels real. It's so important. So if there's one thing you take away from this, try to do it in real time.
All right, the next question up then is, I really like your point about resiliency, that if we're all involved in an overall culture of recognition and rewards, we tend to be more resilient. Do you think that enables employees to be more able to make smarter risks or take smarter risks?
Absolutely. I mean, what is resiliency? Let's ask ourselves that question. It's our ability to bounce back, to overcome a big hurdle, and to keep going, to face a challenge and get through a tough time. And that's really what's happening right now with the pandemic, isn't it? It's how we can handle stress. And when there's someone saying, "You're doing great, I so appreciate this extra effort, you're a rock star," I think it really helps. It may sound trite, but I do think people are wanting that right now. So I think resiliency becomes an aspect of employee well-being. And after all, workplaces are made up of employees, right? So we begin to share that culture of resilience with others. We do it, right? We're showing others that we're doing it, and we know we can do it. So I think being empowered to just take risks and make better decisions is totally a part of having that stress taken off of us, right? So we're given wings, right? We are so much more apt to push ourselves in better ways when we have that presence of mind and the confidence to be able to do it. And that does really happen in a work culture when you've got that frequent and relevant real-time recognition happening. It feels real. Doesn't feel fake, which we don't want. Definitely don't want that.
All right. Next one up is, how can we help our managers better utilize the recognition tools that are out there?
Well, I mean, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that this whole toolkit, right, is a variety of approaches and strategies so that managers have a whole array of possible forms of recognition to deliver, but also encouraging others to do so. It's like any form of literacy or familiarity, right? How familiar we are with it. We want managers to feel comfortable enough with a recognition platform to be able to run it easily and actually be able to set it up so there are some things running themselves, like data. I think it's really important to help our managers become two things. Number one, more empathetic, and number two, more data literate. The first will make them far better at managing their people, of course, but the second, and when I talk about data, it's providing people with the information they need to further improve, to know what's working, and to see how people are responding. Recognition and rewards are so important to talent management right now, and it's bigger than that. I think it helps us build relationships and align our work cultures, creating that community out of a workforce anywhere in the world, helping people to understand so much more about their own unique values. And that's pretty big. I mean, it's a great innovation that I think any company right now can benefit from. I mean, anything that brings us closer together right now, that's a win in my book.
Okay, we've got all sorts of questions coming in. This is great.
Jeez.
Yeah. So here's one from one of the slides earlier on. It says, what does VUCA stand for?
VUCA. I can send you notes on this too. What does VUCA? It is, I have to go back to make sure I'm getting my acronyms right here.
She follows that up with volatility, uncertainty.
Well, volatility, uncertainty. What else? Let's see. Let's throw it out there. Let's see. Connectedness.
Anybody have an answer to that? You can put that in chat. Oh, chaotic?
There you go.
Chaos?
And uncertain
Complexity.
times. Or ambiguity.
Ambiguity. Good ones.
VUCA.
Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity.
VUCA. And if you're out there on Twitter, we should get that hashtag trending, okay?
Very cool. Okay, next one. How to recognize employees on a very low budget.
Ooh. Well, has anyone heard of something called social media? Social media is free to use, right? Start there. Start with a thank you. Start with an email, social media. These things are free. I think so often we think, oh my gosh, I'm going to need this, big, huge budget to do all this stuff. But we have the tools right at our fingertips. And if you're creative enough and you want to ask these questions, we got tools, right? So they're out there. Anyone can do this. You don't need a big budget to do this. You just need the will, and you need a curiosity to want to connect with others. That's what I would say. There's a lot of different ways to do it on the free, but to do it at scale, to do it for the enterprise, yeah, you're going to need digital tools that are interconnected, so you feel like all of these parts come together as the whole.
Right. Okay, what types of things should we recognize from our employees?
Well, I mean, I think you want to recognize behaviors that speak to your values of an organization, right? People that are, it depends on your culture, right? Every single culture is unique. No one culture is alike, right? So there's no one size fits all here. I want everybody to remember that. So I think recognizing and rewarding good behavior, people who are making people feel better, the uplifters in your organization, people who are supporting others, people right now, given what we're all experiencing, people who are adding to a level of consistency, people who are decreasing stress in the workplace. Those are all people who should be recognized. People who are following through, who are consistent. But again, it's up to you. at your culture to define some of this. This is where you have some control and power over what you create there. But again, not a one size fits all anywhere. So
Okay, here's one. I'm not sure if you want to take this or this can be answered offline later. What's the average cost of a good rewards program, i.e. software, gift cards, or other expenses?
I would probably lob that over to the team over at Achievers. And we
Okay,
can certainly, if we get somebody's email out there, we can answer that question for you once we find out some more detail.
super. Okay, next one. How to ask employees what they like as a reward, and the organization has rigid system reward and trying to cut budget.
Mm-hmm. Well, how to ask? I mean, sometimes it's as simple as, sending an email or having a video chat and just sort of, getting to know people. As I said earlier in the webinar, the more we get to know our employees on a human level, on a face-to-face, on video level, right? The more we understand what's motivating them, their likes, their dislikes, all of those things. Because I'm glad somebody's asking that, because you do want to personalize it as much as possible.
Okay. And the last one I'm seeing right now, unless any more come in, is, does your rewards statics take cultures into consideration? I manage a group of 144 people. The majority are Filipino. We have heard over and over that they do not want to be recognized in front of their team.
Mm-hmm.
It embarrasses them and makes them feel as though they're elevated status from the team.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's definitely a question of culture, right? And it's all in context of what that culture is at your organization. So those are all discussions that are going to add up to something we call our business values, our culture. Again, no one size fits all. So in that context, you would want to find ways in which you're not calling people out to others, right? Maybe it's more of an individual, a one-on-one, more personalized approach for a while until you get everybody on board and talking the same language around what our culture is. So again, you can be creative here. There's a lot of different ways you can personalize these programs, but again, unless you ask the question first, you won't know what to do next. Hopefully that helps.
Super duper. And I'm not seeing any more here. Okay, one just came in chat. Should we ask them if they prefer private or public recognition?
I think it's a great question to ask. Absolutely. It's just, if you look at it like you're just getting to know people better, it becomes a more natural conversation. And people appreciate it. And then over time, you might find that, geez, we actually are enjoying doing this in a more public way, and it'll start to feel more natural. I think the more natural it all feels, the more inclined people are to go, okay, let's go public with this, regardless. So you got to start somewhere, though. Yeah, no two people are alike, and no two cultures are alike here. The most important thing is to ask the question and just start. And by doing that, you start developing deeper relationships with your employees and your peers.
Excellent. So I think we've gotten to the end of the presentation now.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone in the audience, for being here. Your time is so valuable. So on behalf of Achievers and Talent Culture, thanks for being here. If you've got any other questions for me, Biro@talentculture.com.
Excellent. And on behalf of HR.com, I'd really like to thank our sponsor, Achievers, and our presenter, Meghan M. Biro, for sharing these great insights and timely insights with us today. Thank you also for our audience for joining and for contributing with your questions. We will be sending you an email with your credit information within 24 hours. You'll also find the credits in your View My Credits page of your HR.com membership profile once the webcast has been archived. Your feedback is important to us, so please take a moment and fill out the exit survey that's going to open in a new browser page on your computer. You do need to be logged into hr.com to access that. I also put a link in the chat if you grabbed it from there. This concludes our webcast. Enjoy the rest of your day, and please stay safe, everyone.